Welcome to the Wolverine Confidential podcast brought to you by Corewell Health. I am Andrew Kahn.
I'm Ryan Zook.
And I'm Aaron McMahon.
The Michigan football team bounced back in a big way, beating Washington in convincing fashion on Saturday. How did the Wolverines do it, and what does it mean for the rest of the season? We break down the win coming up on Wolverine Confidential. Okay, Aaron and Ryan, good to be with you two here on Sunday evening, a day after Michigan's 24-7 win over Washington Saturday afternoon at Michigan Stadium. I feel like we often talk offense and then defense, but I don't know, let's not bury the lead here. Michigan held a dangerous Washington offense at just one touchdown and 249 yards. So I guess my first question to you guys is how did they do it?
Turnovers. Most of that yardage of Washington came in the first half. They were able to move the ball. They weren't able to really score a ton. That kind of led to that 7-7 halftime score. But the second half, I mean, that's clearly when things changed here. And it changed because of Michigan's defense. 3 turnovers in 4 drives, and then all off of interceptions, and then they had a turnover on downs. So the proverbial dam broke. I know we spent all last week talking about the defense and their struggles against USC and just their inability to slow them down. They came up big in the second half. I counted 22 plays for Washington in the second half, 54 total yards, 4 first downs, and more importantly, 0 points. I mean, this was a Washington team that had outscored their opponents 80-10 in the fourth quarter games this year. They come up scoreless in the fourth quarter, and that's when Michigan kind of pulled away and was able to win this game.
Yeah, I mean, the key for me was slowing down Damon Williams Jr. I mean, he set a program record the week before and for total yards, and he's a dual threat quarterback. But Michigan was able to contain him for the most part with his legs, and I thought the linebackers had an outstanding game. They stopped the run, which was really key. Like Jonah Coleman, elite running back, he didn't do much at all. And yeah, they gave some big passing plays up, but nothing too crazy. And I mean, when you stop the run and contain a quarterback like Damon Williams Jr., who's not very big in stature, it sets up that's a recipe for success. So very impressive bounce back performance from the defense.
I'm glad you brought him up because I think Michigan saw something on film with him. I don't know if he's staring down his receivers or what, because we mentioned the 3 interceptions. Jair Hill had an opportunity at a 4th early in the game in a possible pick 6 scenario. Like, they were clearly seeing something there. And look, Damon Williams is listed, I think, at 5'11". He's probably realistically closer to 5'9". So I think the short stature doesn't help his situation throwing the football. And Michigan, made him pay. He was 20 of 32 for 209, which was fine, but they had some big conversions through the air. But Michigan made him pay. 3 interceptions, probably should have been a 4th, and that was the reason they won this game. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and they made him one-dimensional. I mean, he did nothing as a runner. Two positive rushing plays for him, 4 and 6 yards. Everything else was negative, which those are sacks too, accounting for his total of 19 negative rushing yards. But then you got Jonah Coleman, who had some impressive numbers of his own coming into this game, the running back, and 16 carries for 50 yards. So like they shut that down, made him one-dimensional, and then got the takeaways. What did Sharon Moore and the defensive players who spoke after the game say about anything schematically or just the mindset after what happened last week at USC? Because, you could look in on paper, okay, maybe Washington will try to do some of the same things, USC did to exploit Michigan's defense. Yeah. Was it a different game plan for that Washington put out there, or was Michigan just way better prepared?
I think it's a combination of it all, but I think it started with defending the screen pass. That's absolutely what killed Michigan against USC last week. They did a better job of it, I thought, on Saturday. But as you guys pointed out, stopping the run was a key factor in this one. Not letting Washington get a big run or big chunk plays on the ground, and forced them to be one-dimensional. Because what we all know is when a team's one-dimensional, it's easier to stop them, and it puts more pressure on them to convert in that situation. You mentioned, Jonah Coleman, 50 yards rushing. Washington didn't have a run longer than 8 yards all game. So, like, there were no chunk plays on the ground. And as a result, Washington gets behind the second half. They feel like they got to play catch up and throw the ball, and that's when Michigan was there to force the turnovers. So it was ideally how they wanted to play. And Sharon mentioned this after the game, right? This is kind of what the defense had looked like in the weeks before the USC game, in a way that kind of acted as a wake up call. And Sharon was, fairly honest. I thought after the game, he said the hard conversations were had with the coaches and the players last week. My presumption is maybe more so with the coaches than it was the players. But this defense looked a lot better. They clearly were more prepared. They executed better. The tackling was better. Interestingly enough, they didn't play with two of their quote unquote starters in Rod Moore and Brandon Hillman, yet they were still able to force some turnovers and disrupt Washington. So when we say a bounce back game for Michigan, it was that much and more for the Michigan defense, who desperately needed a better performance than they turned in last week in Los Angeles.
And yeah, the tackling too was vastly improved. I mean, 26 missed tackles the previous 2 games, only 3 on Saturday. And when you're able to wrap guys up and not give them extra yardage like that, that's huge for not just the morale of the defense, but just the yardage too. It puts them in tougher spots. And yeah, I think as I think Cole Sullivan said, it was gut check time for this defense, and they dug deep, and now they're season's still alive thanks to a very sterling performance, especially on that side of the ball.
Yeah, we'll get into kind of the big picture stuff here in a little bit, as we kind of break down this game a little bit more. Just the offensive side too for Michigan, and it's just interesting how both teams. I look at like Washington. As Aaron mentioned, they had the yardage, but they didn't really make much of it in the first half. All 4 drives in there, or 3. They only had 3 drives in the first half. Washington got into Michigan territory each time, but came up with no points because of it. Missed a field goal, and then a couple punts. Michigan, again, they maybe felt like they could have had more. I just kept thinking like the dam was going to break for Washington. They were going to maybe hit a big play and get on the board, and Michigan was going to dread not converting some of their opportunities. But it was the exact opposite. Michigan made the big plays, and they were the team that pulled away late. But yeah, offensively, I guess what stood out for you guys from Michigan's attack?
A cleaner game from Bryce Underwood. You can tell the mistakes he maybe made in Los Angeles last week weren't there. I mean, he had more time to throw the ball. He made better decisions with the ball. He's maybe a little bit more aggressive running the ball than we had seen in previous weeks. I thought he played a much better game. The box score certainly bears it out, 21 to 27 for 230 and a couple touchdowns. Jordan Marshall, I think, finally had his kind of breakout game that many of us have been expecting. Justice Haynes was a game time decision heading in. We didn't know if he was going to play or what the situation was. He did suit up in the pregame. He went through the pregame warmups, but when push came to shove and the game started, he was scratched. That left Jordan Marshall to take most of the carries. He had 25 carries for 133 yards and a touchdown. Nothing huge. I think his longest run was 14 yards. But he was very efficient. He averaged 5 yards a carry. He's pushing out 5, 6, 7, 8 yards, helping move the chains, and it helped move the football and help open things up for the passing game. So this was the Michigan offense that we've been accustomed to seeing, and maybe earlier this year and in years past. Throw for 200 yards, rush for 200 yards. They're very balanced. We joked all year, or we joked during the early in the year that, they were still referring to Justice Haynes and Jordan Marshall's 1A, 1B. And in reality, Justice Haynes had pulled ahead. I thought Marshall played a very good game. And whether Haynes comes back or not Saturday against Michigan State, I think Marshall certainly earned some more opportunities and more carries as the season goes on here.
To me, what stood out was the involvement in the tight ends. It's like, oh, if you would have told me that going into the game that you'd be down Marlon Klein and Hogan Hansen, your top 2 tight ends, and yet the tight ends would still combine for 8 catches and over 100 yards, I would be shocked. But it was a smart move by Chip Lindsey, and a lot of times it's just like little safety blanket routes, like check downs, crossing routes underneath, and it's just like easy completions. Like that's what you want to do for a freshman quarterback. And some of them went for some pretty big gains. The play action was working, RPOs working. Like it was, yeah, they didn't light up the scoreboard in the first half, but they were moving the ball, and then were able to capitalize in the second half and punch the ball in the end zone.
Yeah, Underwood's really he's been able to protect the ball for the most part. And that's just been, maybe to me, the most impressive thing for a freshman. no turnovers for Michigan. Again on Saturday, he's only got the 2 picks on the year. So yeah, he's been very good. The passing attack was interesting because there were some drops early, some key ones too, some that could have gone for big gains, others that, like the 4th and 1, Samaj Morgan drops it, turnover on downs. And yet they did end up going back to both the guys that had drops, as well as, continuing to feature McCulley and Andrew Marsh. I guess, what did you see from Michigan's pass catchers overall?
Looking back, I'm glad you brought that up. Looking back on the first half, Michigan really shot themselves in the foot. They go 3 and out to open the game. They had the turnover on downs in the second drive, as you pointed out. Samaj Morgan drops an easy 4th and 1 pass that could have went for big yards. Dominic Zavada misses a field goal, which is an ongoing issue. They get in a 4th and 2 situation. Jordan Marshall can't convert. They turn over the ball again on downs. Michigan left some points, I think, on the off the board there in the first half. They could have, I think, gone into halftime with a lead. They could have scored more, I think, and maybe a distance this game maybe a little earlier than they did. But that's been the theme all year, and I think that's maybe a result of seeing so many of these young guys. This has been a theme coming up now the last couple of weeks. The youth that Michigan's been playing with, it's been documented. It's been an issue, and I think it's prevented them from putting together a full 4 quarters. Now, luckily in this game, it didn't matter. Michigan's defense came up big in the end, but Michigan really left some points off the board and shot themselves in the foot in the first half, and that's really what I think led to their inefficiency, I guess, offensively. But tight ends were big. I mean, there were a couple drops there, but Chip Lindsey was unafraid to use them, and I give him kudos. It was very well done. There wasn't a ton of tape on Zach Marshall. I think before Saturday, he had maybe 2 catches all his entire career. So he's able to get some of these. Deacon Tonielli again hasn't really been a factor until Saturday. Some of these quote unquote no names guys that just haven't played a lot, he's able to utilize and feature, and it was smart. Something Washington probably wasn't necessarily preparing for. There certainly wasn't a whole lot of tape on them, so why not use them? And they were very effective. So we'll see if Michigan can continue to do that. But for Saturday, at least, from a game plan perspective, it worked.
While we're on the offense, I'm curious about your guys' thoughts that, as Aaron mentioned, 2 4th downs that Michigan wasn't able to convert, and then they had an opportunity to go for it again on 4th and inches, kind of in their own territory. I think, what was that, the 3rd quarter, sometime in the second half, and Sherrell Moore decides to punt instead. It worked out because Michigan ended up getting an interception and scoring. But do you think maybe if they get one of those first 2 4th down conversions that he decides to go for it there, or do you think that played a factor? Their inability to convert so far this season, 1 for 9, played a factor in them deciding to punt?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, but you're right. They're 1 for 9 on the year. That's the worst in the country. I mean, whether you look at by total conversions or the 11% success rate, that's both the worst in the country. So, you I don't feel like you should let your success on. Like, do you think there's something wrong with just their 4th down? It's more just an inability to, I guess, on the offensive line or the play calling or whatever. So I don't know. I don't think that should. A failure earlier in the game should change your mentality later. But because it was interesting. Washington did go for it in that same spot and got it. Michigan chose not to go for it. But yeah, again, it works out. You punt and get the interception.
Life is beautiful and fragile. We fall. We get tired. And sometimes we get sick. But with Corewell Health, we are also strong. We fight disease. We battle cancer. We come together. We come back. We push forward. When the body breaks, we break through. Corewell Health. We can.
The first one with the Samaj drop, look, it was a beautifully designed play. He was open. He had running room ahead of him. If he just caught the ball, which he should have, it would have been a clear first down. And then typically, we're so used to seeing, during that run, Michigan's run of Big Ten championships and the national title. I mean, we were so used to them converting on 3rd and shorts and 4th and shorts, and that just hasn't been the case the last couple of years. I was a little bit surprised Jordan Marshall couldn't convert on the 4th and 2. He did pick up a yard, but was a full yard short. I think it's just emblematic of just the struggles maybe they've had the offensive line and the inconsistency they've had in the run game. But I will say this: Marshall got stronger as the game went on, and I think that's a kudos to him. He had some big runs toward the end. I think a lost stat in this game, some folks maybe didn't realize or aren't really talking about. Michigan's time of possession was nearly 38 minutes. It was 37-30 to 22-30 basically in this game, and they dominated time of possessions. And I think it really showed up there in the second half when they were really able to milk the clock, move the football, and eventually wore Washington out.
There were some very nice plays in this game. I mean, the first points, that middle screen for Andrew Marsh where he's just wide open in the middle of the field, where you could have just the circle or the radius around him with no Washington defenders was just huge. I mean, that looked like they took that right out of USC's playbook. Marsh had the incredible one-handed catch after Underwood's scramble. Yeah, there was some good stuff here. I didn't think Underwood was perfect. Again, you saw some freshman mistakes. That drive that started at the end of the third quarter that went into the fourth. He runs out of bounds for a 5-yard loss instead of just throwing it away. He's right by the sideline. He's holding. He's looking, but eventually just throw that away. I mean, it made it 3rd and 11 and was quickly forgotten because then they hit a huge pass play to Deacon Tonelli down the field, got the first down, and eventually scored a touchdown. So but again, you're seeing still a developing freshman quarterback.
Yeah, no, you're right on. But I think you saw a step forward for him on Saturday, and that's he did kind of what the game plan called for. And yeah, I didn't realize there's only like 4 freshman starting quarterbacks in college football this year. So it's hard to realize how young he is and inexperienced he is. So overall, though, I thought this was probably his best game considering the opponent as well.
Absolutely. Some other, concerning things. You had Dominic Zavada missed another field goal, from 48 yards, but the snap and the hold looked good to me, converted from 26 yards, but he certainly isn't as close to as automatic as he was last year. You had Evan Link, the starting left tackle, go down. I mean, can we say that's a season-ending injury, or we're just not sure yet?
It sure sounds that way. Sharon wouldn't call it that after the game, but he said I think he said it doesn't look good. So my guess is if it's not season ending, he'll be out for the foreseeable future. A big, it is a loss for them. He's started every game at left tackle for the Wolverines. He's starting to, I think, fit in there at the role. And look, we talk about the offensive line and the guys coming in and out and the struggles this year. More so than anything, a key to an offensive line is a group that can gel and play together for a long time. And when you have guys coming in and out, it really hurts. So losing him is a blow. They did play Blake Frazier. My expectation is he'll probably continue to start there at left tackle. I don't know how he graded out, but I didn't notice anything, bad, poor. So they're probably going to roll with him, and it's certainly a shot to Michigan's depth. There isn't a whole lot behind Frazier there at tackle, especially Andrew Babalola out for the year due to injury. But Michigan's going to have to roll with what they have moving forward.
Yeah, no, Frazier. I mean, the offensive line actually didn't grade out very good or just kind of average. But yeah, Blake Frazier was one of had an average rate overall, but was one of the top linemen according to Pro Football Focus. So yeah, I didn't notice any like missed assignments or anything egregious from him. So, and I know it seems like the coaching staff has been high on him, even when he's been entering the game as a 6th offensive lineman on occasion. So it'll be interesting to see how he fares with more repetition as a starter.
We talked about when we were previewing this game, the importance of it. This was, the start of the second half of the season, game number 7, Michigan coming off the loss, and you kind of looked at the schedule, and there weren't many other opportunities for marquee wins until Ohio State at the end. But that also meant that you kind of felt like they could, if they win this game, get some momentum and, perhaps be on a big winning streak entering that Ohio State game. So now they get the win. I mean, do you still feel that way, that this was a potentially, counted more than just one in the standings?
I do. I think the deck is kind of cleared for them. I look, Michigan State's a game they should win. Obviously, it's a rivalry, so things could happen. I don't see it. I don't really envision a scenario where they trip up against Purdue at home. Northwestern is looking better. I think they're 5-2, so they are playing better. That game is at Wrigley Field, mid-November. I don't know what the weather's going to be like, but that could be a potential trip up. Maryland is doing Maryland things and not playing well after a hot start. So I don't think that's that much of an issue. I look, I could see Michigan being a 9-2 here going into Ohio State at the end of the year, and I do think they would need that win to get in the playoff. Um, I just have a hard time envisioning a 9-3 Michigan team getting in without a marquee victory. Nebraska isn't, they lost on Saturdays or Friday night, so they're not made that win doesn't look as good as it did at that point. Washington's not ranked, so Michigan's probably gonna have to run the table in the playoff. But either way, I think their goals are still out there, right? Like they talk about beating the rivals, still there, winning the Big Ten, still possible. I mean, the Big Ten's very much bottlenecked at this point. And then getting into the playoff, I think it's all on the table. But they do need to win. I think another loss would kill that opportunity. But the competition, luckily for them, unlike last year, the competition's going to get easier here.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be favored in every game until Ohio State, and possibly by double digits in those games as well. So I definitely think that Ohio State game could have a lot riding on it at the end of the year, which is what fans want, right? You want that game to mean more than just bragging rights, and but still got to take it one game at a time. I think Northwestern might be the toughest game on the schedule now. They're playing a lot better. Defense is starting to turn a corner, and so yeah, I mean, Purdue it should be an easy cakewalk. Maryland has played in like one score games, could be 7-0, but I mean, they have a freshman quarterback too, and are making a lot of costly mistakes. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I think the opportunities in front of them for sure.
Yeah, Maryland 1-3 in the Big Ten, but they've lost in a row now by a combined 10 points. They've been up in the fourth quarter in all of those games. So yeah, those two road games there before Ohio State could be tough. But it's obviously, yes, Michigan State is next. You're never going to overlook that. And with the in-state rivalry, Michigan moved back into the AP top 25, right at 25. I can't remember if I was talking with you guys about this in the press box right after the game, or if it was someone else. But I did think that Michigan would be ranked, and as the night went on, and some of those teams at the bottom of the rankings lost, including USC. We've talked about this. It's not a knock on any of the voters, including our own Aaron McMahon. It's just win you lose matters a lot. So like the fact that Michigan was ranked ahead of Nebraska, beat Nebraska, but then Michigan loses. So then Nebraska gets ranked. And then same thing. Now you see the opposite, where USC, a team that beat Michigan, now falls behind them. But they'll be ranked going into this game in East Lansing. We learned the kickoff time late Saturday night. It is a night game again. How many years in a row is that?
Too many.
3 or 4.
Three straight night games. I thought it was yeah, I think it might be 4. 2021 we were there. It was not, but 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I think since then it has been. But yeah. So that's 7:30 NBC, and tomorrow probably, hopefully we learn kickoff for the Purdue game the following week. But I guess that's no guarantee. They can always flex it and not let you know till the week before. But we shall see.
And Michigan opens as a 13.5 point favorite, double digits. I guess not a surprise given the way Michigan State's playing. This game is in East Lansing, so I think that does play a factor, and it is a rivalry game. And at this point, Michigan State doesn't have much to lose, right? There's a lot going wrong out there in East Lansing. They've lost 4 straight since the opening of the year, 3-0. Jonathan Smith's firmly on the hot seat. If you were to ask, I think most Michigan State fans. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Michigan's, I think, clearly the better team, as is, I think, the case most of these years. But I don't know. As they say, throughout the record books, throughout the rankings, because anything could happen, as we've seen in this rivalry.
Yes, you can absolutely. They that likes to be said, but when one team is a lot better than the other, it often shows. I mean, a couple of years ago, Michigan went there and won 49-0. It was 29-7. I'm seeing here the year before. We'll see. Michigan is. That point spread is what it is for a reason. They've got plenty of issues, which we'll be getting into with help of our Michigan State writer Matt Wenzel later in the week. But yeah, a lot to read about the Wolverines on MLive.com/Wolverines. I'll briefly mention here at the end that because we talked about the men's basketball exhibition game in our last episode, Michigan made 41 free throws in that game on Friday night. They scored 98 points and they lost 100-98. They were down 20 in the second half and they got it to 2. But 20 turnovers and some, poor defense and some impressive, shot making from Cincinnati. They banked in 2 threes in the first half. Certainly didn't help. Neither did not having Adai Mara or Morez Johnson Jr. Neither of those guys played for Michigan. Johnson has been sitting out since at least the end of September when we got to watch practice with some sort of lower leg injury. It's the same thing for Mara, I believe, but he warmed up and looked good in pregame. So I would guess he will play this coming Saturday in the St. John's exhibition. Maybe Johnson won't, but hopefully he's ready for the regular season. Yaxel Lendeborg was terrific in his debut, 31 points, 26 in the second half, 12 rebounds, but not enough. But again, this is why Dusty wanted to play these games. He wanted to be exposed, learn some things, and he said, after the game, we learned a lot more. We know a lot more about ourselves than we did 2.5 hours ago, which was the time it took to play this game with all those free throws, 83 of them. So yeah, that's the Michigan basketball report. Zook, I saw hockey. Another good weekend.
Yeah. Swept Robert Morris University, which was expected. I covered Friday's game, slow start, and then they kind of just turned it on and let their skill take over. And 10-2, first 6-0 start since the 1979-80 season. And a matchup against Western Michigan, the defending national champions, coming up this week, a home and home Thursday and Friday. So if they can make it 8-0 against Western, then it's legit. So it will be a good test for them.
Exciting stuff. Check it all out on MLive.com/Wolverines. Thanks for listening.